My name is Glen Adams with another virtual training for LATICRETE. Thank you for joining us. Today we're going to be discussing the world's #1 selling epoxy grout, SPECTRALOCK PRO Premium. SPECTRALOCK PRO Premium is the world's #1 selling grout because of its ease of use. This product is very easy to clean, very easy to spread. Unmatched performance on the market as far as epoxy grouts go. So today we're going to go over the installation of this. I'm going to go over an actual step-by-step installation video with some tips and tricks that I learned in the field as a former installer. So now we're going to go over packaging for SPECTRALOCK Pro Premium. Here we have a full unit, part A, part B liquid, which will be mixing together, sponge, pair of gloves, and installation instructions, which I encourage you to read, and finally, wash packs, initial wash and final wash packs, which you add to your water for cleanup. Next, full unit would be paired with a 9-pound SPECTRALOCK Part C powder as your color. Next would be the mini unit, which is quart size, has a very similar contents, smaller Part A and Part B liquid, smaller sponge, pair of gloves, not a smaller pair of gloves, and then also wash packs. And a mini unit would be paired with 2-pound Part C powder. And then finally, we have SPECTRALOCK commercial units. Inside this box is essentially four full units of SPECTRALOCK liquids, separated, which we matched with 4 9-pound Part C powders. There's also gloves, sponges, and wash packs in this packaging as well. There are some major misconceptions about epoxy grout that get spread around quite frequently. Some of the misconceptions are that it's very challenging to work with, that it leaves a haze behind on every single job that can be very challenging to clean up. False. There's also a misconception that you need to get out the big scrubbers and scrub this material and start washing it immediately, or you need to use hot water. Those are all myths. Again, you can refer back to our installation instructions for proper installation of this video, or our technical data sheets available at LATICRETE.com. But right now we're going to get into actual mixing and installation. I'll go over some tips and tricks to help you have the most successful epoxy grout job of your career. Alright, here we are with our tile floor ready to be grouted with SPECTRALOCK Pro Premium. The first step, which is probably one of the most essential steps, is making sure that your tile floor that's going to be grouted is as clean as possible. Make sure you remove all construction dust and thin set haze that might be left behind. If you leave any thin set fingerprints or thin set in your joints, take your margin towel, make sure you scrape it all off and give it a really good washing. Alright, now we're going to go over the contents briefly again, and then the mixing instructions for this product. We have our Part A and Part B liquid, sponge, gloves, installation instructions, which I encourage you to read, and the final and initial wash packs here. So first thing we're going to do is take our Part A liquid and a razor knife, or scissors if you prefer. And dump the products into the bucket. Make sure you put all products back. Our Part B liquid. Both your liquids in the bucket. Give them a stir before we decide to add the Part C powder. Now once you have both your Part A and Part B liquids together, you're okay to introduce your Part C powder. And you can mix this product with a low-speed variable drill. Make sure you whip it at a low speed, because if you introduce too much air and high speed to this product, it could accelerate the cure. Alright, now that you have your product mixed up, SPECTRALOCK Pro Premium does not require any slake time after this product is mixed up. Depending on site conditions, the pot life of this product tends to be great, but if it's really hot or humid on a job site, it's always wise to get epoxy materials out of the bucket onto the floor, ribboned out, or you can also dump this product out onto maybe some plastic sheeting and move it along the floor with you as you spread it. All right, we got our SPECTRALOCK Pro Premium spread. A couple little tips here. Make sure you always have a nice sharp float. Don't use a float that's been rattling around job to job in the back of the van for the past 20 years. It's okay to buy a new float. And make sure you have plenty of buckets of water and plenty of sponges and microfiber towels for the wash. Installation instructions state that it'll be about 20 minutes for this material before you initiate the first wash. Site conditions can reduce or extend that. If it's hot and humid, it's likely that time will be shortened. If it's quite cool on the job, slabs cool, tiles cool, it can certainly be extended. So here we are, we're going to wait for this to dry up a bit, and then we'll be back to do our first wash. All right, it's been about 20 minutes since we grouted our floor, and I just want to stress the importance of waiting before you start washing this material. Some factors that I usually like to wait for is the grout will transition color to a little darker, almost enhance the look, and that's typically a good telltale sign of when it's good to start washing this material. I also like to do a tack test where I'll just stick my finger on a joint, see how much material will transfer to my finger. If I see very little material or no material at all, then that's a pretty good sign that this floor is ready to be washed. I want to stress again, very important to use very little water when you're washing this material. We don't want to pull any of the stuff out of the joints. We want to have nice full joints for a perfect grout installation. What I like to do is have my sponge damp, but definitely not too wet, and I'll agitate an area with a little bit of moisture in the sponge, and just give it a second, and it'll tend to loosen up everything so you can get the grout joints very smooth and uniform. And then I'll take it to one swipe per side clean sponge. Now after your first wash, we're going to wait between 60 and 90 minutes before we begin the second wash. Second wash, we're going to want zero tackiness to this grout. Check back soon. So I just want to talk about a big misconception with SPECTRALOCK Epoxy Grout. We see a lot of contractors and installers that have a fear of getting haze or residue left behind that they're going to have a challenge trying to remove. But with this first wash here that I did, when I washed it appropriately, waited the correct amount of time, there's virtually no haze or residue left on this tile floor. I could walk away from this as a finished product being delivered to my customer. But then I'm going to proceed with the second wash, go over my personal technique for it. Make sure you have, again, clean buckets of water, clean sponges. You're going to take your sponge, rinse out all the water in the sponge, and agitate the surface in a circular motion very lightly. Any touch-ups to the grout joints you can do then. And then I'm going to do my one swipe per side with the sponge. And then I'm going to use a microfiber towel, which I think is key, leaving a clean floor behind for your customer. Microfiber towel, I will put it in the water, I will rinse it out completely, and I will wipe the excess moisture down off the tile as I go. And this picks up any haze or a little bit of residue that might be left behind and leaves it with a really nice clean look.
Here's one dry a little bit. Here's one dry a little bit.
Yes.
Maybe before the end of the process, after that's already done, just do a quick mention on the power, power, square feet or whatever. That's fine. Sponge it down. Once it does down. Maybe wrap it out. Realizing cost of the sponge without wasting. Now the comparison to the cost of one that dry, you just dry back the job, remove that trace.
important message I want to get across is how important it is to have plenty of buckets of water, fresh clean sponges, new grout floats, new microfiber towels when you're going to be doing a good size epoxy grout job. The cost of these products is pale in comparison to the amount of labor it costs to have to go back and do a touch-up or clean up epoxy grout haze days later. Sponge, typically, when I'm doing epoxy grout floor, depending on the tile and the coarseness of it, I will throw a sponge out every 100 square feet or so. Costs very little for the type of outcome that you'll get from your project. It's also important to keep heavy foot traffic off of your floors that have been grouted with epoxy grout for about 48 hours. You can cover your epoxy grout in about 12 hours. Thanks again for taking your time to watch me in a virtual training with LATICRETE. Remember to check LATICRETE University for all your virtual training needs. We're updating modules on that site constantly. My name is Glen Adams from LATICRETE. Wishing you the best.